Hello and welcome to Connected with Latham, where we discuss ideas, legal developments, and business trends shaping the global economy. I'm Haim Zaltzman, partner and global vice chair of Latham's Emerging Companies and Growth Practice. And in this episode, I'm joined by Kingsley Afemikhe, CFO, and Jim Carlson, Chief Legal and Information Officer of leading unicorn Shield AI, a venture-backed defense technology company focused on protecting service members and civilians with intelligent systems. Its flagship autonomy software, Hivemind, powers aircraft, drones, and other platforms, enabling complex missions with high reliability in contested environments. And its products, including VBAT, actively support U.S. and allied operations worldwide. Kingsley, Jim, thank you so much for joining the podcast.
Thank you very much for having me, Haim. It's a pleasure to be here. Looking forward to chatting with you about Shield AI, our history, our mission, and our growth.
Likewise, thanks for having us, Haim. I look forward to the conversation.
Before I dive into a little bit more, I wanted the audience to, since I've gotten a chance to work with you guys, and again, I don't understand how you guys sleep with everything I just described. It's really hard to imagine. I've had a chance to work with both of you. I'd love the audience to know the human side and your backgrounds, your journeys, and what makes both of you exceptional. Because you truly are. So Kingsley, I'll start with you. Can you tell me why you're so passionate about how engineering solve human problems, why you've really worked at engineering focus companies, and obviously if you can weave in your journey to your current leadership position and leading all the CFO and the finance position at Shield, that would be terrific.
Absolutely, Haim, and thank you again for having us on the call. My love for engineering and science comes really from my grandmother. My parents on both sides were the first people in their family to read, speak English, to go to university, really have any education. They were all both born in Nigeria. And my grandmother was a wonderful lady. She was an African peasant farmer and who lived and died in the same plot of land her whole life. And she really believed very much in science and in education. And she got my mother, her only daughter, educated. And when we were growing up, we would help her out with data on meteorological trends because the weather was changing and farming patterns were changing. And this love of science and belief in education has imbibed in me throughout my life. I grew up in the UK, where I studied chemical engineering, and I went off and I worked in investment banking and also in finance in general. And what I learned in engineering is that first principle thinking, a fundamental approach, and most importantly, hard work can solve most things. And that first principle thinking, fundamental thinking in terms of hard work and applying those principles in different contexts has helped me here at Shield, has helped me in other companies I've worked. I've worked in the mobility space and also in the natural resources space. And my time in the US at Shield has been phenomenal, and I'm very grateful to be here.
So Kingsley, as we talked about in the past, is my father was an agriculture engineer, and he actually invented the reason how we ended up in the States is a potato separating machine. I kid you not, that's how we ended up in Idaho. So I have a soft spot for any farming to engineering, because honestly, it is the core of the human evolution. So amazing story. Jim, coming from a different angle and literally an angle, because going from farm engineering, you were a helicopter pilot for many years. How does one go from being a helicopter pilot to being a general counsel of a Defensetech company? And be honest with us, because honesty is what we want to get, the perspective we want here. What did your military buddies, who I'm sure can do more push-ups one-handed than I can do with, if I tried, it said when they realized you're going to become a lawyer?
Yeah, a couple of my best friends from the military are here at Shield with me, so they're very much a part of that journey. But well, hey, let me start off by saying thanks for having me, Haim. And you mentioned it earlier, kind of tongue in cheek, maybe, but it's been a whirlwind of a year. It's been a whirlwind of 9 years. But I think one of the great things about the last I don't know, 14, 15 months, has been the opportunity to work with you and with Latham. It's been tremendous, and I mean that very sincerely, and has definitely made my life a heck of a lot easier over the last.
We sincerely appreciate that. I mean, I'll pay you afterwards to send
Yeah,
you
yeah.
about, but yeah, but thank you for that. No, honestly, it's been truly an honor. As you guys know, we're deep into the story. So yeah, thanks for that, Jim.
Yeah. And so to answer your question, look, I have a very non-traditional background, I think, and so I can tell you my path, and I don't know if it'll play out this way for anyone else. But when I take a step back, I think what's been consistent for me is, and this is a less inspirational story than Kingsley's probably, but A, wanting to have an impact, and B, wanting to be on an adventure. And I think that's why I joined the Marine Corps during a time of war in 2003, after I graduated Stanford as an undergrad. And that kept me in the service for about 11 years, flew helicopters overseas. And I think that's also why I joined Shield AI in 2018, just the mission is incredible, opportunity to have an impact. At that point, I'd left active duty and I had gone back to Stanford to get my JD MBA. And like a lot of folks in my joint degree cohort, I didn't go to a law firm. I focused on the MBA side of that degree. And I actually became Shield AI's first product manager and then director of product and program management. And that's what I did here for the first 4.5 years, which was, you couldn't ask for a more incredible way to start your civilian career, managing products like the ones that we develop here. So just a incredible privilege. It wasn't until 2023 that I moved into my current role as general counsel. Ryan called me and asked me to do it. Ryan Sang, being our CEO and co-founder, he'd been searching for a GC for a long time. I told him he was crazy to pick me, but at the same time, once again, it was an opportunity to make a different kind of impact and to sort of continue an adventure. And so I approached this role with a lot of humility and trepidation, at that time and to date. But so yeah, that's kind of my journey. And so now I manage in-house counsel, compliance, industrial security, contracts. And I think if I can bring anything to my team that's unique, it's empowering them by ensuring they're well connected to the rest of the business. Because I think I've sort of uniquely like walked a mile in the customer's shoes, and I've had this experience of working in product management and working very closely with engineering at Shield AI. So I try to bring, I just have this fabulous team, and what I try to contribute is kind of that context, customer and business context.
Yeah, I mean, super interesting that both of you know, are different motivations in terms of the engineering and then the business side coming in, but really having that mission. And we love to see that in companies. I mean, as you guys know, in our growth practice, we see. I mean, I think we have over 2,500 companies that we see without Latham, and the ones that are truly successful and reach a unicorn status and proud are the ones that really can meld the mission with the business and the legal, and really have that connectivity. So it definitely sounds like your backgrounds are there. Taking a step back, or maybe connected to it, very different backgrounds coming into the same position at the same company. Pretty amazing stories. Now that you guys have worked together for a bit and you guys know Shield at who then, and really want some honesty on this one. Who is the biggest nerd at Shield?
Yeah, yeah, that's a hard question because we've got a lot of very smart, very nerdy people. But
No, no, yeah, I know it's hard, Kingsley. That's the point.
Right.
I think for me, one of the sharpest people is definitely Jim. Not to spare his blushes, but he's really thoughtful and really knowledgeable over a wide range of the rice surface area. So Jim's a great guy.
Jim, I'll let you respond. I'll let you respond. How is that tough? Like if you say Kingsley back, I'm gonna get all blushy over here. So
I know, right? No, Kingsley is so wise and so kind, and I'm in the blast radius of that kindness right now, which I appreciate. But I will answer your question. Who is the biggest nerd at Shield AI? I'll say our CTO, Nathan Michael, in no small part because I'm pretty sure he'd embrace that label.
and what makes nerd with defense tech with it's not a usual normal mix. Do you still see the same, tying back to the earlier question, you still see the same mission driven at all levels of Shield, regardless of the intellectual background. And one of the key themes that we explore in these podcasts that I have is whether or not as successful companies you can silo yourself. Or whether you truly have to be part of the mission, really like it. And from my perspective, just one of the key questions I have when I interview someone is what business news story was their favorite of that day? Because I'm really interested. I can look at the resume and see if someone's who has the Latham bona fides to be a lawyer. We have their transcripts, but what I don't know is whether they're gonna really love the business side of what we do and wanting to meld in that. Is that the same at Shield, that you really have to have the mission at all levels?
Yeah, the mission is fundamental to what we do every single day. We revert back to the mission whenever we're in meetings, whenever we have challenges, whenever we're thinking about the right way to go forward. It's part of our interview process. We do not hire anyone who's not aligned with our mission. And just to circle back, our mission is to protect serving men and women and civilians with intelligent systems. And that mission comes from the experience of our founders. Our company was founded by two brothers, Brandon and Ryan Sang. Brandon was a Navy SEAL, went off to Harvard Business School afterwards, just a phenomenal warfighter, believes in this country significantly as we all do in this company. And Ryan is a serial entrepreneur who's built a number of companies and sold them over time. His first one he sold to Qualcomm. And when they came together to form Shield, they really thought about the men and women who put their lives in harm's way every single day to underpin our freedoms in this country and in the West. And they said these men and women require the best technology, the latest, most cutting edge technology to protect them. And so we built Hivemind, which is our AI stack. And also we build the hardware, which is called VBAT, is a Group 3 unmanned aerial vehicle. And we bring those two together to make sure that we're rebalancing the threat environment and we're making sure that those of us who believe strongly in this country and believe strongly in our values can protect them against all the threats.
Yeah, Jim, I don't know if you have anything to add to that. I mean, yeah, very succinct, Kingsley.
Yeah, I mean, Kingsley said it very, very well. And I think our mission is our superpower. It's what motivates everyone here. It's what enables us to recruit fabulous talent, and has since day one. And it's, our mission's at the intersection of really cool technology and national security for the United States and her allies. And at that intersection is using AI to protect people. Yeah. And I think it kind of, it still gives me chills. And I think that's the reason why, I think the vast majority of folks are at this company and working hard every day. So it's critical.
Yeah, I mean, you guys are giving me chills as well. As you know, and I've spoken to both of you guys, offline. That value driven and belief in the U.S. and the West and the values that underpin it, and obviously the men and women who protect it is very important to me personally. It's important to a lot of the folks that I care about. So, as I'll take a stop here for a second. That we are very thankful for the stuff that you guys do, and for Ryan and Brandon and pushing it forward. So. And with that in mind, it's actually a great segue, Kingsley, because the description and how succinct you were is obviously something you've done a lot, and I would love to tie that into the recent fundraise, the F1 fundraise, and would love to hear a little bit about the process. Obviously, you don't need to go into a lot of detail on how great it was to work with Latham. We'll just leave that aside. But would love to hear about some of the issues that are always discussed when you talk to investors, how you talk about the mission, and then what it means for the growth and trajectory of Shield.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe just a little bit about Shield. So we're coming up to 10 years old. So we've been doing defense tech and AI before either was cool. And as of this point, we've raised about $1 billion in equity and roughly $200 million of debt. And what we saw last year is that we're really growing strongly in our AI software stack, which we call Hivemind, and most specifically segments of that, which we called Hivemind Enterprise, which is an AI toolkit which enables companies, and we're primarily starting aerospace and defense, to take control of their AI destiny and really proliferate at scale. And we were thinking about how do we bring this technology, which we at Shield believe is critical to maintaining our strategic edge against adversaries to the industrial base. One of the things that's very notable about Shield is that we're here for the mission, right? And so we want all the companies that are aligned in that mission to win and succeed, whether they're a prime established company or a disruptive company. We're here to further our mission. And so, thinking about that proliferation goal of our AI stack and really thinking about bringing in the industrial base as partners as we go out and execute, we started to think about a round which is strategic led that brings in some of the strategic investors and also gives some of our existing investors the ability to put more money to work because they also believe in our mission. We announced 240. The final number is going to be closer to above 300 million. What's been really great is that we've been joined by companies like L3Harris, by Booz Allen Hamilton, and also by Hanwha Aerospace, who have now joined as investors in Shield and also as partners with us as we scale. And what resonated with those companies and what really got them super excited, of course, is our joint belief in our mission and also our approach of enabling and enabling really those companies to take our AI toolkit and accelerate their deployments in a range of mission sets. For us, this was a new motion, right? It was our first round that we've had strategics invested in us. We have fantastic investors. A16Z is an investor. We're part of the American Dynamism effort that they have, which is fantastic. Riot is an investor. USIT is an investor. So it was a learning process for us as not a 5-year-old startup, a 10-year-old, almost 10-year-old startup to engage with the strategics. And boy, I have to tell you, the image I had in the past of corporate venture capital has changed. I had an image of them as being slow, stodgy, and difficult, and that's absolutely not been the case. They got the mission, they were aligned with how we work, and they've been just fantastic to work with. And we're moving forward on a range of projects with those investors and other partners like Palantir.
So I mean, for the audience, the typical is that the institutional investor, financial, are easier, been in the movie more often, can go to the terms and while the corporate VCs have an institutional background, it's a little slower, decisions are a little slower. And what Kingsley, just laid out here is that was not an issue at all. I was very impressed with the speed that the corporate VCs and the decision making, they knew they had to move fast. It could be maybe this heralds a changing world, that it doesn't have to be slow and stodgy at the corporate VC level, the corporate institutional investment level, and it could really match. So it was a very fast process. As you know, as your lawyer, we would prefer it a little bit more time at times, Jim. Some of those hey guys, can I get this yesterday was a little daunting, but we do what we can. The helicopter's gonna land, which
Yeah.
Jim, this is a great segue from talking about the fundraise, which obviously is a culmination of many work streams at Shield AI. And again, one of the largest defense tech fundraisers ever, and definitely one of the larger ones in near term, generally, with an over 5 billion valuation. Really, Jim, turning to you on this front, you didn't get here from point A to point B easily. There's a lot of work that went through. So would love to hear how, from your seat, and you've had many roles at Shield, how the company has evolved most over the years.
Yeah, that's a great question, and I kind of alluded to earlier that I joined. I've been at Shield for a minute. I joined in 2018 initially, and the company was about 30 people at that time, just in a single office suite in San Diego. And now we're pushing 1,000 folks with offices all around the world. So it's just been an incredible journey. And so when I think about that broadly, I think I would say that the what and the how has really evolved, but the why hasn't changed. First off, and Kingsley did a nice job of describing our mission earlier, and that mission of protecting service members and civilians with intelligent systems just has remained a North Star. And I think to an incredible degree, like our mission and values have remained consistent. The what and the how have changed. And from a what standpoint, sometimes we like to say we're climbing the aviation food chain. We started, our first product was a 2-pound quadcopter that flies indoors. Something that was manageable from a manufacturing standpoint for a very small company, although an exquisitely hard engineering challenge. Then we transitioned to larger aircraft, so the VBAT, which you'll see all over our website, of course, flying at, let's say, 10,000 feet, performing a different mission set, through building autonomy for jet-powered aircraft, weighing, thousands of pounds and flying, 20,000 feet and performing, another type of mission. And now I think, as Kingsley was sort of describing, like to an extent, like the current phase of that evolution is really about how do we bring autonomy to the world and sidestep the bottlenecks of our own, hardware. Like what hardware can we develop first party, and even the bottleneck of, our own engineering capacity to do the bespoke integration work. And that's really where we start to look at Hivemind being an enterprise software sales motion where we're able to provide the tools and the libraries for our partners to really kind of do, perform that last mile integration and bring autonomy to their use cases and their platforms. And so that's kind of like climbing the aviation food chain, going up in the world in like a very literal sense from an altitude standpoint, but then really, I think ultimately turning a corner in terms of like how we proliferate and how we can proliferate through software. And I think from a legal standpoint, as you look at that journey, a number of things stand out, but I'll just say very, very briefly, like a lot of that, like M&A has been very important in Shield's story, and I think continues to be as part of that evolution of the what, right? And then what I think partnership becomes increasingly important, right? But then I think what's kind of interesting from just sort of a contracting standpoint is on the one hand, you're going from a world of SIBRs, like small business innovation research grants and OTAs and these kind of non-traditional contracts to much larger US government contracts, which require a greater degree of sophistication as a defense contractor. And at the very same time, we are kind of spreading our wings, commercially, both internationally and domestically, and sort of building out this commercial practice. And so we have to get good at being a defense contractor of greater size and maturity and sort of develop aptitude, in the commercial landscape, which was not our core day one competency starting as sort of a defense first, right? And you have to do both those things at the same time. So I think that's been an important part of the journey and challenging.
Yeah, it's interesting, and hold the thoughts on both food chains and bottlenecks. I'll bring those up a little
Yeah.
bit later. Just quickly, and you mentioned it, so I want to jab another for you. Is what has been, from a legal perspective, the most challenging aspect? Is it more of the micro, the tech specific, the developing the stuff, the contracting, or has it been dealing with more macro level? International law, global developments. What have you found the harder as a general counsel to deal with?
So that's a good question because I think it is kind of, I mean, it's all of the above, and I think is having all three things be true at once, which is like number one, we are just a rapidly scaling technology startup, and scaling is challenging. And any given day, like there's something we need to accomplish that we just haven't done before. And so like that kind of blocking and tackling like growth from a process standpoint within, the legal department as well as just across the organization, like that brings its own set of challenges and, from a rapidly iterating and scaling defense technology company, right? But from a defense standpoint, we are also in a, highly regulated industry, building hardware for the DoD, subject to stringent compliance requirements that only become more stringent as we grow and sort of our profile and the size of the contracts that we're a party to increases. And so that's an entirely different landscape. And then I think thirdly is that international expansion, which brings in, trade compliance and then geopolitics, that, a whip that we're at the tail end of. I think of those three, if I had to pick one, I'd say trade compliance, international trade compliance probably represents like one of the most challenging aspects, or one of maybe the more like cerebrally like interesting, things to kind of work through because, I think it's intrinsically like an interesting and difficult sort of domain, but also our products, I think, are really pushing the envelope in terms of US disclosure policy. So, there's not always a ready answer to can we export capability X or service Y to country Z. And so, which ends up being an opportunity to really try to shape some of that policy and thinking and partner really deeply with the government. But I think that's at least like the most, one of the more intellectually challenging areas where we spend our time.
Yeah, it's super interesting. And again, we love to focus on themes on this podcast. And again, I'll repeat it because aside from being mission driven, it's really hard in any company to ever be siloed. And siloed thinking leads you to very limited result and limited capabilities. And Jim, as you highlighted, again, that you really have to cover it all. It's all of the above. There's certain areas that may be more difficult than others in certain strengths, but you really have to be able to connect throughout the organization at every level, or you really can't do your job. At least you can't do your job well. And so it's amazing that you're able to connect that with, because there's no tech growth area that has, for lack of a better word from my perspective, clashing, but incorporating with the larger industrial base than maybe defense tech. And with defense tech companies really having to become basically the large defense contractors and understanding that. And kudos for Shield for navigating that so successfully, which is also a great segue, Kingsley, for my next question for you is, what are the macro trends in defense and AI that you see shaping the world? And obviously would love to hear how you think Shield is best positioned to take advantage of those.
Yeah. The way we think about it is that the defense industry is really driven and defined by the threat environment, and the available industrial base. And I'll talk more about both of those in a second. What you see between us and many of our adversaries, specifically also in the Pacific region, is a great imbalance in the industrial base. And also, our adversaries have spent many decades studying us and studying our platforms. And so, post the first Gulf War, we as a country and also with our allies focus on discrete, exquisite platforms that have tremendous engineering behind them. That the challenge is that often our fighter jets and other exquisite platforms or aircraft carriers can be taken out by relatively inexpensive ballistics that can be produced in mass and at scale. And this creates challenges for us where, in an attempt to kind of dominate the arena, we have a weakness point there. And so, what we do here at Shield is to right size that imbalance. And so, we focus on what's called intelligent affordable mass, attritable mass. And so, give you an example like the VBAT, which is a phenomenal Group 3, what we call ISR, so intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance drone, which can achieve many of the missions of drones or platforms that are 40 times more expensive, but a fraction of the cost. And that trend, combined with the AI trend, which is another trend which has been very impactful for us, helps us rebalance things. And I'll talk more about that in a second. What we've also seen is really a hostile electronic warfare environment. We're present in Ukraine, and Ukraine is it's an interesting arena where you've seen, and also in the Middle East, you're seeing jamming, and you're seeing many of our platforms require GPS to go from A to B to execute what we call the kill chain, really to execute their mission. Using our AI stack, Hivemind, we've been able to, which we've put on our VBATs, we've been able to navigate in electronic warfare denied environments to execute our mission. And this is very, very key, very critical. It means that irrespective of our adversaries using relatively cheap missiles or ballistics against our platforms, we can produce them in mass, we can produce them in scale, we can operate in electronic warfare jammed environments and still execute what we need to do. In addition, didn't have to tell anyone on this call that we're living in a different world when it comes to kind of Europe and the Pacific region. We've seen the understanding really from many of our allies that the time of the peace dividend is sadly behind us. It is time for every country to do their part in their own national security and also in the national security of NATO and all organizations as a whole. So we're seeing acceleration in investments from our partners in Europe, but also from the Pacific region. We announced, for example, an AI partnership with Korean Group KAI and also with the Republic of Singapore Air Force. and we're doing a lot more in Europe. And we find that our message of enabling the industrial base, accelerating our allies with AI core technologies is resonating very, very well in those regions.
And Kingsley, like tied into that for me, and again, this is going to be a little bit nerdier on the finance side. All that is key. It's lofty. It's mission driven. How do you use the finite, which is what we all have, unfortunately, capital, including it was a mega round you guys just closed, still a finite amount of cash. How do you think through capital allocation at Shield? And balancing the demands of the different parts of the business and what to focus on specifically, like actual operationally.
Yeah, it's really really hard. Being candid, right? So we have a software, we have a hardware business, both of which are underpin and our mission and what we're trying to achieve. They're very different. The way you have the metrics to measure progress, the way you allocate capital, the way you compensate is very very different. What we try and do here at Shield, we have a bias for data, right? Unsurprising when you have a leadership team that's very engineering heavy like we do. You have to have clarity on the timeline of expectations for return, and you have to have clarity on the financial outcome of the engineering R&D investment. One of the things that we do differently from some of the primes is that the percentage, if you take our R&D expense as a percentage of revenue, that number is 20, 30 times some of the defense primes. So we're investing very heavily in R&D and very heavily in our core technology. At the same time, we need to make sure that investment has a sensible and reliable timeline to a particular return. And that really dovetails also with our partnership approach. We believe in industrial base. We are not trying to become a new prime. Others are, which is fantastic, and we wish them well. But there are things that we do really well, and there are things where we can work with partners. And for example, we announced a partnership with a company called JSW, which is based in India, really to lean into manufacturing in India, which is a lower cost base, and also to supply that market. We've been really excited to announce our new CEO will be joining us. Gary Steele is a fantastic leader. He previously was the CEO of a company called Proofpoint, took it from the IPO in 2012 when the revenue was about 60 million and grew revenue to over 1.5 billion ARR when it was sold in about 10 years later, and then joined Splunk, where in the 2 years he was there, he doubled revenue and grew margins every quarter. And he brings just a phenomenal experience in scaling and building a company, and also doing it in the public markets as well, which is extra doubly challenging. And so he'll be joining us in mid-May, and we couldn't be more excited.
Yeah, I should have mentioned that earlier when I was talking about how busy you guys are, and the fact you're bringing in such an exciting CEO with Gary's tenure credentials and impact is amazing all at the same time. And literally, I can make a lot of analogies to landing like airplanes on ships and all at the same time. But I'll leave that to my drink later tonight. Kingsley, a CFO, I appreciate what you just said, and the allocation's hard. What I find even harder in this, since the sector and what you guys are doing is oftentimes novel, how hard is it? What's the black box on your ROI on the inputs? Because you mentioned that you were very data driven, which I love and respect, but certain industries have more data because they've been at it for longer. Their outlook and the deliveries, it's just a little bit more multiple cycles of being able to gather it. What in terms of and when you guys run the data, what's that black box? Is it small on the stuff you don't know? And how much you give the black box the ability to impact your ROI?
Yeah. So really, there's two parts to that question, right? There's kind of like, do we know what we know? Do we know what we don't know? And then secondly, how do we explain what's in, as you call it, the black box to our investors, to the market, which is another challenge that we work with. What's great about our company is that we're open to advice and thoughts, right? So we have a phenomenal board of directors. Individuals such as Siobhan Zillis or Doug Filippone, who ran the government business for Palantir. And we can really draw on that experience on companies that are innovative, who've gone out there and done it before in terms of having different revenue streams, different segments of businesses that are not necessarily obvious to understand. So everyone sees Palantir as a phenomenal success now, which it is, and it has always been a phenomenal success. I remember when they went public, it was really difficult for many research analysts to have a clear handle on what they do. And so the way we work on it in our finance team is we've sort of brought together uh, a team of all talents. I have individuals who worked in startups before, who worked in software startups, who worked in hardware startups, and then also have individuals who worked in large defense companies who understand that really importantly challenging. I say importantly challenging because, as taxpayers, we should all care where our dollars go to. Really importantly challenging regulatory environment that we operate in. And we bring all those skills together and we make sure that people really turn up. And when I say turn up, is that you have experience from other contexts, but when you show up and you sit with an engineer who's going through a challenge or wants to achieve a goal and truly have empathy to understand what they need to do, you can take your past experience and make it relevant to this particular context that we're in. So, like I said, we draw on advice, we bring talented people together, and then we show up. And that's an important part of what Jim and I do. We spend a lot of time, with our teammates in different parts of the business, understanding things the first principles way.
Yeah, I show up. I mean, that's a great. I mean, again, the key always, and we have these conversations I do with our younger associates. You can bring it all together, but you got to bring it to ultimately and show up and present it and really push it. So, yeah, it's amazing that you guys can do that, particularly in an area that is not in flux, but is dynamic to say the least in the defense tech sector, particularly with the global trends as they are. So the global trends are challenging, but we all need our partners and allies in life and in business. You guys have been, to say busy would be an understatement on the word busy. And recently, in terms of your partnerships and lining those up and really creating a pathway in different directions, where do you see these collaborations heading in the near future? Would love to you guys to talk about what you specifically look for in some of the partnerships you've done, and where you see them taking you forward. Because making business arrangements is key to growth, and as Jim you mentioned earlier, M&A has been a key story, and that seems to have turned into more a partnership engine more recently. So I'd love to hear your views on where that's going to take you forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think broadly, and I mentioned earlier that partnerships are sort of like increasingly key, which is maybe unsurprising, just as the company kind of expands, our surface area increases, and we really lean into international markets, and we beyond our sort of like our initial core U.S. defense market, which remains central, but I think partnerships are probably for us principally about two things, which are often the same thing. And one is expanding global reach with trusted local or regional partners. And it's just, I think we found that that's essential. And Kingsley mentioned JSW earlier as a great example of, really fabulous partner without whom, we wouldn't be looking at, the India market, and with whom we have this really, exciting opportunity, to create value together in India, which is a huge market for autonomy, for defense, and a really important partner of the United States from a national security perspective. And then I think the second and like hugely overlapping category is partners that help us accelerate the proliferation of Hivemind. And I think, I kind of mentioned this earlier where, one of the big transition, or a significant transition at this phase of the company's growth is no longer being bottlenecked by like what hardware do we produce ourselves, which is still a vitally important part of the business, but really enabling partners and customers to leverage Hivemind to accomplish their own goals in terms of autonomy. And so partnering with OEMs and then partnering with companies like Booz Allen, who in either case, these companies that can help drive adoption and integration of Hivemind onto new platforms, which are going to range, we've seen it from quadcopters to, jet aircraft and military and civilian applications. So the field of use, like the range of applications for Hivemind is so broad and will be over the coming years that we just need this ecosystem of partners um, in order to in order to proliferate and touch a meaningful piece of that market.
And Kingsley, just quickly for you on that front, Jim obviously talked about their goals and expanding markets. How are your partnerships tying to the fundraising? And do you think about that? You mentioned a few of your partners are obviously now investors in the cap table. How proactively do you and Shield think about that?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, our focus is our mission and really enabling the industrial base. And you know, we spoke to a number of companies, and we wanted to make sure that how they were thinking about their technology roadmap was aligned with ours. And we are just so pleased with our partnership with L3Harris and with Alan Hamilton and the work we're doing with Hanwha. In general, we know that we bring innovative technology, and we also know that there are companies that have been really doing the yeoman's work of defending this country for many decades, right? So they bring a deep understanding of mission sets and their challenges, and also have a range of platforms onto which we can put our high-med technology, and we can work very closely with them. So just to summarize is that if someone is aligned with our values, and many companies are, and we see a meeting of minds and where we work together, we'd be delighted to have them as investors in us, or as partners in any other way.
Uh, all right. Well, investors, partners, it brings us to we've covered a lot of topics. So this is the last part of my Grow podcast, and folks, it's what I call the speed poker session. So yeah, and our audience can't see you on the podcast, Kingsley, but Kingsley is actually stretching out right now. It's pretty impressive. He's ready for it. Uh Multiple questions. I'm gonna try to nail you guys one at a time. Please be as succinct as possible, because I know you can diverge and digress in some of the stuff. So we'll start with Jim and then move to Kingsley. What's the biggest professional obstacle you face, Jim?
Yeah, I'll just say transitioning out of the military, and specifically from structured environment to startups in particular. And part of that is learning to build processes and teams. In the military, you get pretty good at dealing with ambiguity. But one thing you can count on usually is sort of existing processes and teams. And then, in a startup, ambiguity extends to everything, and then you really have to build the plane as you fly it. And so that was, I'd say, that's my biggest challenge.
Build the plane as you fly it. Love it. Kingsley, you biggest obstacle.
Well, I'm sure it's the same for many other people, but the financial crisis of 2008, and what was really shocking about it as someone who's earlier on in my career, was seeing people who you deeply, deeply respect be absolutely terrified and have no idea what's going to happen next. And I actually think that was a really good way for me to embrace risk and to understand that the world is not necessarily as it was, and you just have to lean into change.
Lean in, change. Speaking of leaning in, teammates. Jim, what is the ideal teammate? It's three specific things I care about so that I focus your answer: education, experience, and temperament. What's your ideal?
Mm, I think that I care less about like formal experience, and what I'm looking for is track record of solving problems, and a willingness to learn from a temperament standpoint. I think at the end of the day, it's about competence and humility. And for me, that last, that humility is like it's important. It's what keeps us learning. It's also the social glue that binds us. At Shield AI, we talk about kindness, which I think is really, along those same lines, and it's really important. It's what enables a whole cast of A players to collaborate effectively as a team.
Kingsley?
Yes, so experience is deeply important. Applying that experience to our particular context, even more so. The all the things that Jim said, I fully agree with. I look for inquisitiveness and curiosity. If you are curious about the world, about what you do, or what others do, you will want to learn more, and if you learn more, you will grow, and you'll be a better person.
It was hard. So as you guys know, and I think I've spoken to you that the reason I have the speed poker, I'm really into the theory of poker as a way to analyze life. And all business interactions. I believe life is a stochastic game and not deterministic like chess. And obviously, this is that leads me to this harder question for you guys. It's what I call the poker table question. You're sitting at Shield AI today, and you get to change or adjust one thing in the game itself. All right. So what do you do? Do you adjust the actual game, the broader economy? Do you adjust the table, the defense industry? Do you adjust the house, the regulatory regime slash government regulations? Do you adjust your stack of chips, how much cash you have, and how you can allocate that cash? Or do you adjust the other players? They're not playing fair, they're not coordinated, are the primes being mean, government stuff, etc. I know it's a loaded question and it's meant to be. So Jim, if I could start with you first. You're at Shield AI today. What do you change on the poker table?
Yeah, I think it's definitely got to be the house. And acquisition reform is an important topic, and a lot of ink has been spilled on it. I mean, for me, I would just focus on the very tactical question of like, can the government draft a contract from scratch in less than 6 months? Because, we can do it. I know you can do it in a day. So, like, what is going on here? And if you haven't witnessed it firsthand, it's just like you don't believe it until you see it. And I say that with no offense to all the hardworking folks that like make that timeline a reality, but you know, moving faster um, on the government side, and then I think from regulatory standpoint, um, I talked about export earlier, like greater degrees of like transparency and predictability into decision making processes is something that really impacts us. And I will call out because um, I love our customers and I love our counterparts in the federal workforce. And I will say that on the export side, I've actually been like shocked at how collaborative our relationships are in solving export challenges, both with Department of State and Commerce. But nonetheless, we're kind of in frontier land with our products, and so more transparency into how some of those decisions are going to be made would be very helpful for us as a business.
Kingsley, poker table. Yeah, Jim. As you know, we've been in the process with you guys. We've had a lot of discussions with Latham on the government contracting side. We have a team in DC that literally deals with it. And unfortunately, as you know, some of the answers, this is just how it is. And I'm very hopeful. I'm very hopeful. I know I'm a glass half full type of guy. Just like corporate VCs, as we noted earlier, seem to have made a pretty amazing transition. And hopefully, the experience on Shield is something we see more and more deals across industries and sectors. I'm hoping that there will be a change to government contracting that really lines up with the realities of the business world and how stochastic it really is and the need for real time. So sorry, Kingsley. Yeah, I have to hear your poker table answer. It's what do you change?
What kind of CFO would I be if I didn't say cash? So we are a fast-growing, emerging growth company, and one of my goals is to drive growth and to drive more profitability, and so we can have more capital to deploy in all the great technology that we have. But like Oliver Twist, I could always do with more, so it's always going to be cash.
Cash is king. So speaking of the real king, and Jim, you mentioned the aviation food chain earlier. I love food, as you guys know. I love my bagels. I love my sushi. I love all sorts of stuff. What is your favorite food to eat at work and at the poker table? Assuming you're playing this poker game, what's your favorite food? And again, it doesn't have to be fancy. It can be. But we love Taco Bell. We love everything on this show. So give it to me, guys. I'll start with Kingsley on this one.
There's nothing better than a lovely sunny roast chicken with some vegetables, some broccoli, and some Brussels sprouts. I'll go with the sunny roast.
Wow, you tossed in there. My wife would be so happy with you tossing in the broccoli and the Brussels sprouts in there. It's very different from my Taco Bell answer. Jim, you?
At work, I'm going to say protein bar because it's what I have every morning. First thing I do when I show up to work. pretty boring, pretty functional. And if I'm playing poker, I had to think about this. If I'm playing poker, I'm probably playing with my kids, who are, 8, 10, and 13 years old. They're probably beating me, and we're probably eating chips, and we might even be using potato chips as our currency. So that's kind of where I'm at as a poker player. Hi.
That's too funny. Well, that sounds like somebody I need to invite to my poker game. I want to personally and obviously professionally, as you know, on the side of Latham, thank you guys for your time. But personally, I really appreciate it. I know you guys are, as noted and discussed, are beyond busy. And personally, as an American, very thankful for what Shield and you guys in the mission are driving towards. And professionally, it has been a total pleasure, even when Jim wants something same day or yesterday, to work with you guys and on all sides, and do the fundraising with you, Kingsley, and Jim, to work with you on the government side. It's been a true pleasure for our Latham teams to be doing all of those transactions with you guys. And yeah, very thankful for you guys taking the time.
Thank you so much, Haim. It's great to be here with you and great to have this conversation. Thank you so much.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks, Ham.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. So thank you all for checking out this episode of Connected with Latham. You can subscribe and listen to new and archived episodes of Latham's podcast on lw.com, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere else you listen to podcasts. If you have any questions or would like additional information, please email us using the links located in the show description. We hope you'll join us the next time and continue to grow and prosper. Thank you.
This podcast is provided as a service of Latham & Watkins LLP. Listening to this podcast does not create an attorney-client relationship between you and Latham & Watkins LLP, and you should not send confidential information to Latham & Watkins LLP. While we make every effort to assure that the content of this podcast is accurate, comprehensive, and current, we do not warrant or guarantee any of those things. And you may not rely on this podcast as a substitute for legal research and/or consulting a qualified attorney. Listening to this podcast is not a substitute for engaging a lawyer to advise you on your individual needs. Should you require legal advice on the issues covered in this podcast, please consult a qualified attorney. Under New York's Code of Professional Responsibility, portions of this communication contain attorney advertising. Prior results do not guarantee a similar outcome. Results depend upon a variety of factors unique to each representation. Please direct all inquiries regarding the conduct of Latham & Watkins attorneys under the New York's disciplinary rules to Latham & Watkins LLP, 1271 Avenue of the Americas, New York, New York, 10020. Phone number 1-212-906-1200.